All right, so we are going to get started here. Crystal just gave us a really nice introduction. I'm going to expand on that a little bit. So thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Brooke Oliveri. I am the manager at the Long Island Health Collaborative, and we are bringing you this presentation in collaboration with the New York Coalition for Transportation Safety, as Crystal mentioned, through the Walk Safe Long Island initiative, which is a combined effort that both of our organizations work on together to bring programming like this to you guys. So just a little bit more about our respective organizations here before we get started. So let's meet the panelists before we hear from them. First up, we have Cindy Brown. She is the Executive Director at the New York Coalition for Transportation Safety. Also on the panel is Mark Hoffaker, Program Director at the New York Coalition. Lowell Wolf is also joining us today, Program Director at the Coalition. And two important team members behind the scenes, Lynn Margaret Brown and Liz. They are not with us today, but very important members of the team.
Liz is here.
Yeah.
Oh, Liz, you're right
Liz
there.
is here.
Yeah, sorry, I'm here.
I couldn't see your face, sorry. All right, and without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Cindy.
All right. Well, the whole purpose of this program tonight is really to bring everybody up to date on probably what you already know, that we're losing way too many pedestrians and bicyclists to crashes with motor vehicles. So one of the things that we thought would help is to educate you about the laws that are out there already in New York State that are intended to to help pedestrians not be injured and to help bicyclists not be injured. And by so doing, we would, reduce the number of people who are hurt by motor vehicles. So we want to also give you some information on what we consider to be the best practices that will help you stay safe. There's things that you can do that we recommend that just make you more visible and easier to see and just keep it safer for you to walk altogether. And then there are a lot of new devices coming along that are called e-mobility devices that you're going to start to see a lot of on your streets and sidewalks. And there are almost no laws that govern these other than the fact that they're no longer illegal. So there are examples would be scooters that you see a lot of young people riding. These are all electric powered. They're considered greener. It doesn't mean they're any safer, it just means that they don't use gasoline. And the law, since it just gives them permission to be on the road, doesn't actually say where they have to ride and speed limits or anything of that nature. So if you have bike lanes and they're gonna be in them, then you're gonna be sharing your bike lane with or your walking lane with regular bicycles and with all of these new electric powered devices. So that's one of the things we think we need to talk about. And then we want you to recognize how COVID-19 has really impacted traffic safety. I was on an earlier conference call today with all kinds of DOT officials, Department of Transportation throughout New York State, and everybody said that no location met their goals for traffic safety from the middle of about 2019 through 2020, that even though there were less cars on the road, the number of fatalities for vehicles miles driven is way up. Next. Just as an example of what I'm talking about, this is a list of very recent pedestrian injuries and deaths that all occurred on Long Island streets. One in North Lawrence, one in Wyandanch, one in Main Street, Huntington, a gentleman seriously struck by an SUV on a busy Long Island roadway. Cops say pedestrian fatally struck by a garbage truck, a teen seriously injured on another Long Island roadway, and a Massapequa man and his dog fatally struck on Merrick Road. So these are just, as you could see, these occurred between April 23rd and May 4th. So it's a lot. It really is. It's a lot to take in, and there are a lot of people out there being hurt. Next.
It's a lot, but it's not all of them. It's only a few.
I know.
Yeah.
True.
And it's changed since May 4th. There were probably even newer headlines.
Right,
I
right.
know. And actually, it's not just a Long Island phenomena, although Long Island is actually the worst in the state. U.S. pedestrian deaths on a whole throughout the country have been on the rise. And that, again, as I said, despite less people driving. So pedestrians are being hit at a higher, are at a higher risk of being hit by a car during the pandemic. And that's partly because there's less traffic, so the traffic can go much faster. You don't have a much risk of survival if you're struck by a vehicle that's going in excess of 30 miles an hour. So if there are cars out there now that are going 100 miles an hour, so there's no chance. Next. These are the actual laws that have been enacted in New York to make things safer on the streets for pedestrians. If you should cross at a marked crosswalk or at an intersection, state data tells us that most pedestrians who are struck, of all ages actually, are really struck outside of a marked crosswalk or mid-block or walking between cars. Drivers must yield to pedestrians that are in a crosswalk or at an unmarked crossing. This law is intended for the driver to stop if you were in a crosswalk. I wouldn't tell you to bank on it. I would tell you that's what they're supposed to do. The only place I know they actually do it is Garden City and Annapolis, Maryland. They're the only two places I have ever been where a car actually stopped when the pedestrian walked out into the crosswalk. You should always obey the walk, don't walk signs. A lot of the signals now are countdown signals, so you know precisely how much time you have left to cross the street. So you should be a better judge. If it's a 4-lane street, it's going to take you much longer than if it's 2 lanes. You should always walk on the sidewalk when there is one. You should walk facing traffic when there is no sidewalk. You have the right of way when a car is pulling in or out of traffic across the sidewalk. That could be a driveway, a personal home driveway, or another type of driveway. The vehicle owner has the responsibility, or the vehicle driver has the responsibility to look behind them. And many cars now have cameras that do help them to see, but it's not always fail-safe. Pedestrians are not allowed on limited access roads such as expressways and interstates, nor are they allowed on the entrance or exit ramps of these roads. I do realize that sometimes people have to stop on these because they have a problem with their vehicle. It could be a flat tire, or the car could break down, but you should call for help as quickly as possible and stay away from the vehicle. Next.
Okay, so we have a few pictures here of your library. You got a nice little bike rack down there in front of your library. I was there yesterday and I saw some posters up from New York State Department of Health, CBC. They have a campaign going on. So your library is spreading that message, which is great. I was talking to Crystal, just for a few minutes before, I find this to be an unusual library because you're on Main Street. A lot of libraries are freestanding off to the side with a parking lot. But, I think it's probably a great location because, as she said, there's a lot of foot traffic. You happen to be on a very, very busy street. Next, please. And I would say, I've been to that theater, across the street. I think that this is my favorite crosswalk of all the crosswalks I know. on either Nassau or County. I love the way that's painted. I guess you have some artists there. You've got a theater, you've got the library. You know, that is, you don't have a red light, green light there. So you have a lot of protections for pedestrians. You can press a button. I assume a light comes on to tell the cars to stop. I'm sure it's very busy. I'm sure on a Friday, Saturday night, that's still a difficult, crosswalk. But it does seem as if your village took into account that that's a widely used crosswalk, and they tried to make it a bit safer for pedestrians. Next.
And one of our attendees did note that there is parking in the rear of the library as well. So that's good to know.
Right, exactly.
Okay, what we have here is an example of what would be considered an ideal pedestrian crossing versus what we would think otherwise of. Obviously, on the left, we have the best situation in which you have a painted crosswalk, quite a bit of visibility, signage, and you also have people walking in a group, which means, in a sense, there's better visualization in numbers. Instead of strength in numbers, we have better visualization. You see more people walking. If you're a motorist, you're bound to slow down when you see something like that. Unfortunately, that is not always the case, and we have on the right side, in the right picture, a situation that is not ideal at all. The young lady walking there with the walker and with the dog are in the middle of a street. Obviously, they're doing that because there are no sidewalks. Some other observations that you could make. I mean, it looks like she has a walker, so apparently she may be at a disability. She might be physically challenged, which makes it difficult for her to move around. In the event that she needs to get off the road quickly, it might be tough for her. And let's see if anybody in the audience picks up what else is wrong with what she's doing as far as the direction she's going in. Anybody know?
Well, I can tell you.
Yeah, she's walking with the traffic instead of against the traffic.
Yes,
Say that again?
she's walking with the traffic. She
She's
should
walking
be-
with the, yeah.
Very important, because just second, Lola, is that when you can make eye contact with the driver. If there is no sidewalk, you want to see the driver of that car, because the research shows they have more of a tendency to slow down, or hopefully slow down for you a bit, if they actually see your face. So, Patchogue-Medford, you probably have a lot of sidewalks, but there's a lot of places in Long Island where there are no sidewalks. So,
Yeah, especially eastern, you go further out east in Suffolk, and you have situations like that. And most pedestrians, well, I wouldn't say most, but many pedestrians are not aware that unlike other vehicles or bicycles or any other motorized or non-motorized vehicles, you don't go with the flow of traffic, you go against. Again, as Mark pointed out, trying to make eye contact with the operator of the vehicle if you're a pedestrian. Next, please. And on that note, we have, again, one situation that is favorable and one that is not. On the left, no sidewalk. That makes for a difficult situation if you are a pedestrian. As it states here, what would make you feel safer? Obviously, most people would say that right photograph is the way to go. That's what you want to do. Beverly has pointed out that we have a fair number of streets with intermittent sidewalks. I think the situation becomes more problematic as you go further out into a lot of the communities in eastern Suffolk.
I always found intermittent sidewalks pretty strange. You're walking on a
Sidewalk to nowhere.
And you're on a sidewalk, and then one house doesn't have a sidewalk in front of it. I live in Seaford, and I have, areas like that. Then you got to go out in the street, then you come back on the sidewalk. I'm always surprised that it's not consistent, ideally with sidewalks.
And it's not just even, I'm picking on eastern, Long
Right.
Island.
It's not.
There are parts of western Suffolk I've seen that as well. And like you mentioned, even in Nassau,
Mhm.
be on a sidewalk and in the next block, you're walking on somebody's lawn.
Mhm.
And ideally, you would want to have a situation such as that in the right photograph. It would make you feel safer. It designates an area for the pedestrian, and it separates you from the roadway where the traffic is, the motorized.
Lowell, just to give you a perfect example of this, Cantiac Rock Lane, which is adjacent to the Nassau County Department of Public Works, has that exact same situation. There is a BOCES school on the corner, and there are students who come out of there all day long who walk to their cars. And the first block in the area surrounding the school, they have to walk in the street. And then there's a sidewalk, but they don't get up on the sidewalk. They continue to walk in the street. So it's really, it sends a bad message.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Beverly makes a good point. In the wintertime with snow and you walk in the street, it made me think, I have a good friend who lives in Westboro, who has cerebral palsy, and he walks to get the bus, but then in the wintertime, because they don't plow, or shovel the sidewalk, actually, by a lot of times he just doesn't go to work because he doesn't want to walk in the street, with snow. It's dangerous for him.
yeah. And it's confusing for pedestrians not knowing, especially if you're not familiar with an area. You're on a sidewalk, and then all of a sudden there are no sidewalks. It's kind of confusing, and it's unfortunately that's the way it is with many residential areas.
Yeah.
Next, please. Okay, pedestrian safety recommendations. Make sure to push the button to get the walk icon. I mean, it sounds like common sense, but a lot of people don't press those buttons. You really need to. Here on Long Island, there are a variety of these push buttons. Variety meaning that some of them may actually give you, as a pedestrian, extra time to cross the street, an extra few seconds. Sometimes if you don't press the button, you're not going to have a walk sign, which gives you, of course, the right to walk across that street. So when you want to cross the street, just press that button. If there's a button there, press it. Once the walk icon comes on, you may now cross the street. Common sense. Be sure to watch for turning vehicles, though. Again, we talked before about the right of way. Yeah, you have the right of way as a pedestrian in a crosswalk. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should be complacent with the fact that you have the right of way. There are turning vehicles. Many times you'll have buses or trucks, tall vehicles. You may be under the impression that they could see you because they have the high ground, so to speak. That's not always the case. They may be seeing their sight of vision may be completely different from what you think they have. They may be seeing things from further distances, from looking at a long shot, whereas the short distance in their immediate vicinity, they can't see you. And I've known of cases where that happens, where people get hit by vehicles, unfortunately, sometimes fatal. Especially it happens when vehicles are making left turns, tall, vehicles like buses or trucks. And unfortunately, pedestrians feel, oh, well, they must see me. No, that's not necessarily the case. They're making a very sharp turn, right turn on a smaller street. They may not see you at all. And their eyes are focused on some other areas of the roadway, completely oblivious to the fact that you are there, and they're blind to that. So if you walk slowly, moving on to the issue, make sure you make eye contact with them at all, and when at all possible. If you walk slowly, we were mentioning before about the elderly lady and the dog, and if you have a crosswalk, what you should do is take it easy. Don't try and rush. If you see, especially if there's a countdown signal, don't try to make it till you see the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you're only halfway through the street. Take it easy, relax. Don't rush across the street if you are physically challenged. Take your time. That's especially true if there are big streets like Sunrise Highway. Some areas of Sunrise Highway have islands in the middle. If you're crossing, take advantage of that island and wait for the light to turn green in your favor again. Finally, and this is unfortunately, this is a serious problem. We have some estimates, we're talking about 1 out of 3 pedestrians either getting injured or killed because of the fact that they are what's known as drink walking. In other words, and I'm not talking water, we're talking spirits. People are drunk and they walk, and unfortunately, their vision is not going to be as good, and they're not going to be aware of their surroundings. And because of that, quite often, they will be the cause of traffic accidents. It's their own doing.
I would say they're a contributing factor. You know, there's
A
all
contributing
the cars
factor, like
probably
not
speeding.
looking at traffic passing
Right.
by.
Right. It doesn't
One
help.
other, excuse me,
Impairment.
one other thing I wanted to say here too, with this push the button. If there are many locations throughout Long Island where if you don't push the button, the walk light will never come on. You will
Yeah, you'll
never
be standing at a red light forever.
Yeah, so if you've had a couple of drinks and you're standing there wondering why you're not getting across, now you know.
That might be good, because then you could sober up as you're waiting for the light to turn green. So that might actually be good in a sense. But yeah, you're right. But again, it's serious. It's a serious issue. Impaired walking is essentially what we're talking about, and that is a problem. Next, please. Okay, other roadway designs and devices that can make it easier and safer for you to cross the street. And there are several. One of the more interesting ones that engineers have worked upon more recently, road diets. Same way that we go on personal diets to lose weight. Well, we try to reduce maybe the size of the roadway where motor vehicles would be riding, and cyclists, etc. Giving pedestrians, in other words, a little bit of an edge. How do we do that? Well, there are a number of ways. They help to reduce vehicle speeds, usually by reducing the number of lanes. And sometimes we have what are known as bulb outs. They are extensions of the sidewalk. They give the pedestrian a little bit extra safety and a little bit extra time to cross the street from the sidewalk. That's one method. We talked before about some sections of Sunrise Highway having islands, what we call pedestrian refuge islands. And again, that allows pedestrians a safe place to stop midpoint in roadways, especially when you have these roadways like Sunrise, which multi-lane, very big widths to cross for some individuals. It might take them time. So island refuge, always good to have one of those refuge islands. Raised crosswalks, they can reduce speeds on vehicles. They change either the texture of the road or the height of the road, and it makes it a little bit easier for motorists to realize that they're in a different section of a roadway right now where maybe they need to slow down.
You know, Lowell, I don't know if we saw it in that picture before, but just to mention, right outside the library.
Yes.
This
yes.
is very different. It's a nice crosswalk, but they also have some
Traffic
kind of
sensors.
they have some speed bumps.
I don't know if that was a speed bump or a traffic sensor. I'm not sure.
No. They do have.
Was it a speed bump?
There are speed bumps. They're low. They're not real high ones.
Yeah.
It's before you get to the crosswalk. And again, that's pretty good engineering there to protect people in that crosswalk. There's like 4 or 5 or 6 of them, so if you're driving fast, you really get a bump, so that's a nice little intervention that the village did.
Yeah, we should have more of those around.
Right.
A couple of others, crosswalk visibility enhancements, such as crosswalk lighting, enhanced signs. Patrick had done a great job with those very inventive crosswalks. Not your typical crosswalks, but hey, that's they're cool. Gets your attention. That's an excellent idea. I like the piano keys in particular. Leading pedestrian intervals, or LPIs, at signalized intersections. I mentioned that briefly before. Sometimes when you have one of those pedestrian push buttons, they will actually provide you extra time to cross the street. That's what an LPI is. So like it states here, usually 3 or 4 seconds before vehicles get a green signal to turn left or right. It gives you a little bit extra, that little extra edge to move ahead of the traffic as a pedestrian. It's a great safety feature, and it would be great if we had more intersections that had that application installed.
Lowell, those are particularly good at intersections where there's lots of turning traffic.
Yes.
Because this way the pedestrian and, especially if it's several pedestrians, has a chance to be into the intersection and very visible to the motorists. So that's where it's particularly helpful.
If you think about it, if you're a pedestrian and you get a green light the same time that a turning vehicle gets a green light, you know, it's a little bit of a, that's just, you have to worry whether or not they see you, whether or not they're going to speed to try and cut you off. So that extra few seconds really makes a difference. Okay, next, please.
All right, so now we'll discuss some bike laws. You know, probably most of us on the call here drive, maybe not everybody, but we might be drivers. So you remember, you know, we took a road test, but New York State has a vehicle and traffic law. The book is really thick. You know, there's a lot of laws in there, but there's a pretty big section within the vehicle and traffic law around bicycles also. So one of the first concepts, then we'll talk about the laws, is to think of a bike as a vehicle. If, you know, just like you have your car, it's got a motor, you have your bicycle, most of them are non-motorized. And so number one, you have to follow the same traffic laws that drivers do, which theoretically means you stop at a stop sign, you stop at a red light, you yield. Not all cyclists do that, obviously, but that technically is the law. The second one's an important concept is sometimes you see signs up that say share the road. Bicyclists have the legal right to be, you know, riding down Main Street, you know, next to the cars. A sidewalk should be thought of as for pedestrians or young children on bikes, but, you know, not for adult cyclists. You know, sometimes, I mean, it's 100% law within the 5 boroughs of New York City. In New York State, it's a little more unclear, but most cyclists have the right to be on the road. They are not just for cars. And just like pedestrians, and I have seen this, don't be cycling on the Meadowbrook Parkway. That's where I saw somebody cycling. You can't be on highways. Even like parts of Sunrise Highway, it's a highway, you know, where there's, you know, people are going 55 miles. You can't be biking, you know, in those situations. The next bullet's important, that it's a vehicle. So you ride the same way that vehicles do, different than pedestrians. You're supposed to be staying over as far to the right as you can. We'll talk a little bit about infrastructure in a minute. If there are bike lanes, ride in a bike lane. But if there is no bike lane, ride to the right, get as close to the curb or a parked car. We'll talk a little bit about that. But you go with the flow. And God forbid, if there was ever, you know, if you're riding against cars, which a lot of cyclists do a lot, that crash would be pretty bad. You know, a head-on crash between a cycle and a car. Boom, you know, that's a lot of force. If I'm riding my bike next to a car and they hit me, I mean, some of the force of that crash will be dissipated. You know, it won't be head on. So New York State law, in terms of helmets, says children under the age of 14 and over the age of 1 have to wear a helmet. Parents get the summons. You know, I'm not so sure how often officers give out summonses for this, but it's the law. It's the law also for skateboards, scooters, you know, any non-motorized thing that kids are using. Now, Nassau County changed the law about a year ago. They made it under the age of 18. Some localities can make their own law. I actually think that somewhere like New Rochelle, where everybody has to wear a helmet. We'll talk a little bit more about helmets. So adults by law don't have to use helmets, but
it's recommended that they do.
Helmets are very effective at reducing brain injury. While I'm thinking of it, because the law in Nassau, I'll just mention a new law that Suffolk County actually passed related to biking. It's called the 3-foot law. So when we're driving, we have to give cyclists 3 feet. We can't buzz them. You know, we can't drive right next to them now in Suffolk County. It's first county in New York State. You got to give them at least 3 feet. That may mean as a driver, you know, you have to slow down because you can't give them 3 feet. You may have to wait till you are able to give them 3 feet. It's a pretty nice law that Suffolk County passed. And as a matter of fact, when I was driving Montauk Highway yesterday, it was interesting. I saw a few cyclists and I saw these cars veer out a little bit. I was wondering, oh, I wonder if 3 months ago, maybe I wouldn't have seen that. I don't know if it's because of the new law, but I was happy to see that. Next, please. A few other laws related to the bike itself. So think about your bike. This is the law. You have to have a white reflector in the front and a red reflector in the rear. And if you think about that just for a second, the white is like headlights on a car. On your car, you have brake lights in the back. You have red. So reflectors, when you buy a bike, most of the time you get them, but if you don't, they cost like $1 or $2. Put reflectors on. I'm not sure if it's a law, it may be, but the spoke reflectors are also very helpful. Spoke reflectors, because they're moving. And then if you're perpendicular, of course, perpendicular, they at least see those reflectors. And you usually have pedal reflectors on your bike, and pedal reflectors, that yellow on the back of the pedal, car lights at night are beaming down a little bit. So they see, they'll see the yellow reflectors. Actually, I'll just jump really to the third one, but so that's all-time reflectors. If you're riding at night and it's dark, you have to have a light in the front, white light, a red light in the back. And the law says it has to project, I don't know the exact amount, but no one's going to measure, but I should check it, but I don't know if it's 500 feet. You have to have lights on your bike. Let me just, I feel like I'm a good driver, but when I'm driving at night, I'm not a young pup here, these eyes, and people don't have lights on their bike or reflectors. They are hard to see. And I mean, a lot more crashes happen at night. So, get those lights. And I'll tell you, today, you see a lot of adult cyclists, probably very good cyclists, they use their lights during the day, just like some drivers. I put my lights on when I'm driving during the day. I don't have to. Cyclist doesn't have to put these lights on, but it's an extra split second of visibility. It helps. The law says, when you're riding on the street, at most, you can only be 2 abreast. If a car is coming, you're supposed to then, shift, so it's only single file. Probably the time when this law is broken the most is on a Sunday morning. A lot of bike clubs sometimes will, hopefully there's not many cars. They'll take the whole lane. There'll be 5, or 6 of them, but technically that's against the law. And a little known law, I'd say, is that a bike, you have to have a bell or horn on your bike. When you buy bikes, you don't necessarily get that. Again, they're cheap. Put them on. But I actually think the point there is just like, it's communication. If you see something, I mean, you can yell on a bike, but just like if you have a car, if someone's a kid jolts into the street, you honk your horn. It's about communication. So get a bell or a horn, put it on your bike. If you have kids, give them a bell or a horn. Next, please.
It's also a good idea, like with pedestrians, the same thing. If you're crossing the street, have an ear available. Sometimes you see headphones on. And
yeah, actually, we're going to talk at the end a few tips, but it's actually a law when you're riding your bike. And I certainly see people breaking this law. You can only have 1 earbud in. You're breaking the law if you have 2. You're breaking the law, but the important point is you're missing what's going on in the traffic world because you don't hear things. I would say don't have any earbuds. Okay, so let's talk for a second about bike helmets. We mentioned the law. The second bullet is important. A lot of people have helmets, but they don't use them correctly. We do a lot of bike education, for kids. So these photographs show you, my helmet. When I put it on, I hope you can see. It's probably a little hard to see, but first, it's it can't be up here. It's got to come down because on a bike you tend to fall forwards. So you got to get it. And the little test we tell kids or anybody can do is maybe about 2 fingers from your eyebrows to the bottom of the helmet. Then you see the top left picture. These plastic things that slide up and down, they should be at the bottom of your ear, kind of forms a V. And then, kids find this hard, but when you're clicking it, you want to get about 1 finger here. So if you're shaking your helmet, it's not moving. A lot of people wear their helmets too loose. I see people wear their helmets like this. They're not even clipped. They're just going to fall. If it gets cracked, your helmet, replace it, because it's not going to be effective. And I guess one last thing about helmets, if you have children or, just that there are generally two types of helmets, a bike helmet, which these diagrams are showing you bike helmets, but there's also a helmet called a multi-sport helmet. They tend to be cut up a little bit higher, but they have more protection in the back here. And the reason for that, it's good for kids who skateboard a lot, or rollerblade, because you tend to fall backwards. So you're getting a little more protection at the back of the head. You can use your multi-sport helmet on a bicycle, but that's the real benefit. Some people like the way they look, but the real benefit is protecting the back of your head if you need that. Let's see. Good to know. Okay, thanks. Next, please.
Don't forget about if for some reason, God forbid, you do bang yourself up your helmet, you hit your head with the helmet on, get rid of that helmet.
Yeah. So I'll take this lull if you want. I mean, you usually do.
Sure.
I'll give you a break. So just really quick about infrastructure. What you see on the left, it's a dedicated bike lane, but you're unprotected. It's just a white line there. A car could still swerve and hit you. It's good that it's okay. Anyway, let's say that they're giving you a place to ride your bikes. It's illegal to park in a bike lane. This car is doing something illegal. Another type of bike lane, and you see this one, the right picture, which is 347, it's a protected bike lane. What they've actually done, there's various ways you can protect a bike lane, but what they've actually done here is they've just removed, they were redoing 347. They just removed, they put the bike lane off where the sidewalk is. So that's great. You're riding your bike. You're not riding, next to cars that might be going fast. Okay. I think Allison's saying, don't give use. Yeah, don't. And
You never know where it's been.
Inside a helmet, I have a friend, the guy I was telling you about. I got my friend who has CP on a tricycle. I got him on a bike, I took him out recently, and he took his helmet out. There's stickers inside your helmet that have a year on it. His helmet was like 15 years old. They're not going to be effective, and they don't have to be expensive. They're very effective. So actually, I think when I was driving home from the library, maybe if you live there, I went north of Main Street. There was sort of a lake, and I saw the sign, bike lane, and I saw it was painted, and there was a sign telling you it's a bike lane. I go about 3 blocks, and it says end of bike lane. I wasn't quite sure. I mean, I can certainly tell you in Nassau County, there's a lot of kind of silly bike lanes because I think Suffolk's a little bit better in terms of that, connecting them and actually putting bike lanes where people go, I mean, from point A to point B. But maybe I missed something there, but I was a little surprised at that. And then next, just to show you, riding against traffic is hard. Stay alert. So here on the left, now in Suffolk County, that taxi, he wouldn't be able to pass that guy. He would have to wait. He can't give that guy 3 feet. He'd have to wait probably till that bike got past the car and then maybe cut back over to the curb. Then he could give him 3 feet, technically. Both of these photos are showing you, it'd be nice if the guy on the left was looking towards the driver, maybe in the mirror. A very common situation that happens to bike riders in traffic is dooring. Somebody opens up, they just parked their car, they just open the door of the car. There's a cyclist there or maybe a pedestrian, and they get knocked down. This guy's unprotected. What if he gets doored on the left and then this taxi's coming? That's a real, bad situation. So that's also that communication. Like when I'm riding my bike in that situation, I'm looking to see, is there somebody in that car? Then I might look in that side view mirror to see, are they going to be opening up the door soon? Or I'll just very often in this situation, I might even stop it. I'm not such a great biker. Stop behind that parked car and let those other cars go by me. You know, that's a pretty narrow turn right there. But remain alert.
It would be
You know?
nice if the motorist was a little bit more concerned about their surroundings as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's see. What a quick little tip, and then we'll go on. There's something, if you're for us who are drivers, there's something called the Dutch reach. When you pull in and you're parking your car, don't open the door with your left hand, because you tend to be looking straight out. So use your right hand, go over there, open up your door, because then you're turning and we have, as bad as my eyes are, we still have good peripheral vision, and you see your side view mirror. So you're more likely to see possibly, you know, that cyclist or pedestrian who might be next to your car. Next.
Those Dutch people, they're really on top.
All right, we're going to talk a little bit about the micromobility devices. I mentioned them earlier. They are really coming at us fast and furious. The scooter, the blue one on your screen, is the most common that you probably see right now, and they're very popular with boys and girls who are, well, I believe Allison has one. They're popular with all age groups.
Yeah, right.
They, generally speaking, you would not see them go that fast, but I understand that they are actually going to have competitions, races with these to see, you know, that they're going to run. So I'm assuming that they can achieve much higher speeds than we think about. The woman on the bike, I can't tell if this is an e-bike or not, but the e-bike runs on a battery, and it's mounted right on the bar in the middle. And there are some bikes that are just pedal assist that have a little help with them. And then there are other bikes that are completely electric. These can run into a great deal of money. Again, as I said, most of these devices are not covered by any current law insofar as that they have to be registered or licensed or anything. And then you have the little moped scooter type that you sit on. And there have been a lot of incidences with those. They pulled them off the streets in New York City, but then they just put them back on again. They pulled them off about a year ago because they had only been out for 6 weeks, and they had 3 deaths in that amount of time of people who were bumped off of them. And this woman on this bike here is wearing a helmet, but I don't believe that there is any law out there that says anybody on these devices has to wear a helmet. You can get motorcycle insurance, but I don't know whether there's any type of insurance available for these. And as I said, they are coming. I cannot tell you how many businesses or companies are now manufacturing these devices, and they can be very expensive. But you can get a scooter probably for $500 and up. And they were quite popular as Christmas gifts for young people. Next. All right, let's just recap a little bit. These are not laws, but they're ideas and tips on how, if you're somebody who likes to walk, or if you have to walk from a train station to your home or to a grocery store or wherever, it's a good thing. They're just good hints to keep in mind. Again, just to repeat, you should always walk on the sidewalk when there is one. And if there isn't one, you walk facing traffic. You should cross the street at a corner or in a crosswalk. Again, you know, we noted that the law is in your favor there, but, you know, be cautious. You should always, one of the best things that you can do is to be safe, be seen by wearing brightly colored clothing. Anytime you see people out on the road working with construction or road maintenance or whatever, they are all wearing reflective gear so that they are easier for you to see. And
Mark is modeling one right now.
Mhm.
Sorry, Mark is modeling right now one.
That's right. I know not everybody has a reflective vest, but there are lots of, you know, sneakers are reflective, shoelaces are reflective. You can, If you carry a backpack, you can put something on the backpack. There are everything from little flashing lights to just, you know, reflective tape that you can use.
Stickers.
Yeah, and if you push a shopping cart, do the same thing. Put the tape on the cart. It just makes it easier for you to see. You should not text or talk on your cell phone when you're crossing the street or riding a bicycle. I cannot tell you how many people do this. And I know you've seen pictures all over the place of people who fall down holes and bump into poles and do all of this kind of thing. And those are not good things, but getting hit by a car while you're doing it is worse. If you walk or bicycle at night, again, wear the reflective, make sure that, you know, you can be seen by motorists. And if you are somebody who walks any distance at all from public transportation or just to walk your dog at night, it's not a bad idea to carry a little flashlight or use the light on your cell phone just to light where you're going so you don't step in a hole or a broken sidewalk and take a fall. So these are just some of the tips that we've learned from other people who are great walkers and who are out all the time and about the precautions that they take to stay safe. Next.
So let's recap for bicyclists, and I'll go over a few bullets, but let me first say, I think an important concept for cyclists, adult cyclists who are out in the street, is to be a consistent bike rider. Don't go fast and slow down, you know, swerve around. You might have to if there's cracks in the road, but I think it's helpful to drivers if they see you and they see that you're a consistent rider. As drivers, we make judgments, quick judgments about cyclists. If it's a kid riding a bike, I'm going to drive a lot slower because I know their skills are not going to be that great. If it's I don't know if any of you know what a mammal is, M-I-M-I-L. That's a middle-aged man in Lycra. You know, if it's like one of those guys in Italian bike thing and they're real skinny, I'm going to assume that they're probably going to ride fast. They might be aggressive, you know, bike riders. So, but be consistent when you ride out in the street. For right now, it's not a bullet here. Think ABC. If you haven't taken your bike out yet, pump up your tires. Tires lose air all the time. So 2 or 3 times a year, you may have to pump them up. If you haven't used the bike all winter, you know, they'll be low on air. It's a little more comfortable. It's a little safer. You're less likely to get a flat. B is brakes. Make sure your brakes are working. You know, you're not going to drive if your brakes aren't working. Don't ride your bike if the brakes aren't working. And C is chain. Just make sure it's oiled up a little bit. I mean, just the idea of make sure your bike's in good working order. Stop at road crossings. Okay. Beware of turning vehicles. I've seen in Queens, you know, working in Queens, I see some of those bike riders, you know, they try to beat like a big city bus who's making a right turn. And oh God, you know, they try to do the turn before them. And that bus driver doesn't see them, you know, vehicles, you know, use your horn. There's courtesy when people are more on trails. People, when they're going to pass you, they say on your left, you know, because you may not even know there's a cyclist behind you. You know, I mean, there's no sound, but that's that idea of communications. If you got a bicycle for one, it's a bicycle for one. There's not supposed to be anybody, you know, on the handlebars or anything like that. And I mentioned the last bullet, which is actually a law. Make sure, you know, that you can hear things. Next.
All right. Well, that just about wraps up our presentation. Thank you to all of our speakers and our attendees. Before we let you go, we just want to let you know that we do have a scholarship contest currently going on for high school seniors. If you know of anyone who might be interested, please do share this URL, walksafeli.org/essay. Attendees, we're going to open it up for any questions that you might have. So.
Yeah, hi. So I live in Patchogue, and I wonder what Are you getting the word out? Or is there some literature in Spanish? So we see a lot of people riding around who may not, who are using their bicycle obviously as it seems as a primary vehicle to get to work and get around. And I saw that also in West Hampton, where people are really dressed all in dark at night. And really hard to see, and I don't know whether people perhaps know some of these things. So is there literature that's available in Spanish as well as English, and what are we doing to reach out to some of the communities that, yeah, people are working, and we have here in Patchogue, there are like houses where a lot of workers share a big space, and you can see just line of bicycles outside rather than parking spots. There's a whole line of bicycles outside. So I'm just wondering about getting the word out to
Well,
people so that
It's
they
a
ride
great,
safer.
let me say a few words and then Cindy, we have literature in Spanish, but we are trying to reach Cindy, Lo, sometimes we speak at churches. No, we don't speak Spanish. I found that to be very effective. Sometimes, we've been to some Spanish churches afterwards because a lot of people, are there. I'll put it to you, Beverly, a little bit, is if you have any contacts, give us a call and we'd be more than glad to work with those people and, give them reflective vests if we have enough.
Right, that's what I'm wondering. Can we
Yes.
get some reflective
We
Yes.
can.
gear
We
out
can-
there?
We have helmets.
Helmets, just my heart is in my mouth when I see people, riding at night without a helmet and all in dark. That's really
Yeah, I
hard.
know. Well, again, if you have any contacts, maybe you can give it to the Crystal, the librarian.
Sure,
We'll follow
sure.
up. We will follow up.
Sure,
Definitely.
we do have
All
some.
right, Beverly, just so you know, if we do a program at a church or a community center or whatever, to people who are Spanish speaking, I will have somebody with me who speaks Spanish. Even though I don't, I would bring a translator with me. And yes, we would provide helmets, we would provide reflective vests.
Bilingual literature.
Right.
Okay, we do have an organization right here in town called Sepa Mujer. Their headquarters here isn't here in town, but in the village. But I think that they reach out Long Island and they deal with primarily, with a Spanish speaking. Their focus
That would
is
be great.
Spanish-speaking.
We'll reach out to them. We'll reach out
Okay.
to them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right.
It was a great presentation. We moved here about 6 months before the pandemic shut things down from New Mexico, where I have ridden my bike to work, and I've just been spooked to ride here. I work a few villages over, so it's definitely bike rideable. I'm not sure that the presentation encouraged me to ride my bike. I think I'm a little spooked about all the Long Island drivers.
Well, it's good reason to be, it's great to commute. I don't know, there's not many, but there are some bike maps that show you. Yeah, that's a very good point from Allison. If you were riding with the group, it'd be helpful. There are some bike
Also,
maps.
if you have community organizations, you're a complete streets county. When they are doing and building and re-engineering roadways, there's an obligation to make those roadways safe for everybody. And bike lanes should be incorporated into the design of the roadway. So one of the things you can do is really be an advocate. Like, if they're very big on making villages people friendly so that people come back to shop and go to restaurants and do, in these villages. And they have an obligation to make them safe for everybody, not just the person who comes in a car.
Well, I think that's what, was it Mark who said that you drove by on Waverly by Patchogue Lake and you saw a few
That short
boxes
bike lane.
Right, the short bike lane, but that's brand new. That's
Right.
brand new, less than a year old. So that, and it does stop, but I think that's what you're talking about, Cindy, that when they redid
Yes.
that whole road there, they
Yes.
put in these dedicated bike pedestrian lanes, and it stops. It's short, but
It's just
You know,
it's a start.
well, one of the other points that Cindy makes a lot is just like, I'm sure you would do this, obviously, if you were riding your bike to work, is plan your trip, is to say, well, maybe you have to go 3 blocks out of your way, but it's safer, to do that. Don't just take off down Main Street or something. Maybe there is a safe way, to possibly ride. Maybe you're going to add 10 minutes, but on some days you might want to do it. And if you feel comfortable, if you found a route that seems, safe, it would be nice.
All right, thank you.
Well, if you happen to think of any other questions, feel free to reach out to either Cindy directly or me. If you are watching this program at a later date and it is recorded, please feel free to send your questions to us via email. And once again, thank you so much to all of our attendees, our speakers, and Crystal at Patchogue-Medford Library for hosting us.